I just meant that there is this very happy, enthusiastic understanding of what participation means, right? Because we have this very straightforward narrative of if only more people participated, the world would be a better place. And there is nothing wrong with that. We indeed need better access infrastructure, we need more voices to be heard, especially with the digital and so on. But we also need to realize that there is something called the infrastructure of participation, which is very rarely talked about. Right? The people who own the ways by which we get access to things, the people who regulate and understand what is the legitimate ways of participation, these are all things which are always hidden. So when you see a Walt Disney movie, you never really see what's behind it, right? All you are interested in looking at is Snow White and what she does to the seven dwarfs. But the kind of labor that goes into it, the politics of representation, so kind of just scratching beneath the surface is something that's important. I would say it has a lot to do perhaps with the very ways in which the World Wide Web was imagined. Right? If we go to Tim Berners-Lee's imagination of what the WWW was supposed to be, there was this idea that once the digital and the internet technologies were freed from industrial defense complexes of war and of espionage and so on, it is going to build a connected world. And I think in some ways we never really got out of that particular imagination of the internet. There has been such a very strong, maybe human desire to connect and network and just grow more and more intimate that we are almost trained not to look at the fact that we are living in worlds that Sherry Turkle calls in worlds where we are alone together. Right? And the positive bias comes from the fact that we are going through transitions socially, politically, and culturally. And a lot of it is catalyzed by people getting access to the digital. And those stories are so powerful and they are so seductive that they can often hide the darker underbellies of pathology and perversion, which are a part of the internet's protocol as well. The way to phrase it would be that there is a historical continuity between technologies of mass production, circulation, and distribution, and the ways in which structures of governance are shaped. With the internet, there is this tendency to dehistoricize, both temporally and geographically, the ways in which certain structures of governance have been set in place, right? Which is why we believe that participation, which is such an opaque word because it means the same in every context, but it does not. It leads to the imagination that if everybody is on Facebook and Twitter, then everybody is participating in the same way. We kind of neglect the fact that there were larger histories of mobilization, of coming onto streets, of putting your bodies in danger, of bypassing fascist and authoritarian regimes and so on. So you want to look at not merely the estimate or the promise of the digital, but look at how different technologies in historical times have shaped structures of how we rule ourselves. And that the digital is going to produce a new form which doesn't need to be celebrated, but needs to be explained in terms of where the new power constellations are going to be. It's not as much as, let's just begin with an idea that we live in dangerous worlds, right? When we go out on the street, we never know that the next person might not kill you. You might be run over by a bus, you might be kidnapped, your kidneys might be sold, and so on and so forth. So we live in dangerous worlds. The digital is as dangerous as everything else that we live in, but we haven't created enough signposts and enough references to remind us of the danger that lurks there. So even when you are crossing the road, the fact that there is a red light reminds you constantly that if you violate it, then somebody is going to run over you. So when you talk about participation on the digital and especially within cyberspace, what we really need to create is reminders of the dangers and pitfalls that are there. For a lot of the young people who discover the internet as a sandbox and they think that it's a space for experimentation, we don't really have enough science to remind them that this is going to actually come and have very negative repercussions on them. So from very simple things like sharing your pictures on Facebook to really deep-seated things where you are trying to orchestrate a political protest or a campaign and then you get arrested or you get threatened or you get killed or you get invisibilized in different ways, right? So it's not merely saying that the internet is dangerous, but that we haven't yet created enough public awareness and critical discourse about the dangers of the internet. And so we always think of it as a free, liberated, open, unregulated space, which, as we know, it's not. Like, look at the simplest of interactions between you and Facebook. You cannot even change the color of your Facebook page, and you think it's your page, and you think you are in control, and that it's facilitating participation and intimate agency, and so on and so forth. But it's not. So we just need to be more aware of where these power structures are in that particular space. It does, and one of the ways by which dissent on the internet is regulated is by making scapegoats of people like Snowden and Manning, right? It's about saying that, of course, the internet is a free space as long as you do what I ask you to do. It's the old Thatcherian Fordist problem, right? When Ford said that it can be any color as long as it's red. The internet works essentially in a similar fashion. So this notion of freedom, the notion of power, the notion of agency, can we kind of start deconstructing it, right? I mean, that's how I would kind of put it.